Hello, everyone. Welcome to Nails and Beauty Talk. I am your host, Asia the Bird. To have a very special guest with me today, he is a fashion designer. Please welcome Jansen Garside. Hello, Jansen, and welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you're most welcome. So I want to go ahead and get started by asking where you're from and tell us about your upbringing.
Was born in Phoenix, Arizona, moved to Mukilteo, Washington in 1999. Barely
Hmm.
remember Arizona, but yeah, grew up in kind of a small town, Mukilteo, right
Hmm.
on the water. It was a beautiful area. Grew up, yeah, I had a brother, or I have a brother, and
Hmm.
dog, typical suburban life, kind of.
Hmm.
I went to Washington State University for undergraduate. Began my career studying pre-med. I first did zoology, then I switched to neuroscience, and then I switched to fashion. So
Hmm.
I kind of been all over the place, but I had a really good foundation in the sciences, which has definitely helped me in fashion and kind of give a more maybe
Hmm.
analytical, critical um, view to my designs, which has been
Hmm.
fun. And then after Washington State University, I applied to master's programs around the world for
Hmm.
high fashion, and I got into a few. And I went to Accademia Costume E Moda in Rome, and here I am, 1 month away from finishing.
All right, that's really, really cool. But I definitely want to go ahead and ask, like, looking back at your life, what are some moments that stand out to you that fostered your interest in fashion?
I have always really been into art for as
Hmm.
long as I can remember. I've always wanted to go into art or keep it as a hobby if I wasn't actively pursuing it as a career. And
Hmm.
I always just had this like innate desire or kind of it was a desire to look good and
Right, right.
to like I always cared about how I dressed and
Mhm.
where I grew up, like Washington is not known for their fashion, and especially like
Mhm.
my neighborhood and the city I lived in, everybody's just wearing Uggs and North Faces and Patagonia. They call it very granola style, and
Right, right.
so fashion was never really on my radar for um, a career. I wanted to design games at one point. Then I wanted to
Right.
be in advertising. I knew I wanted to
Mhm.
do something in art. And I had some doctors in the family as well, extended family.
Mhm.
And I kind of got an interest in medicine and seeing the art in medicine, and especially surgery, reconstructive surgery, and things. I
Mhm.
started shadowing reconstructive surgeons at hospitals in Seattle, and I saw like a ton of artistry in medicine. And so
Right.
I kind of shifted my goal to medicine and keeping art as a hobby. Um, but it, because in college when I was applying to or sorry, in high school when I was applying to colleges, I got into Savannah College of Art and Design,
Mhm.
and I was like, "This is really expensive to go here," and
Mm,
I don't
right.
know exactly what kind of artist I want to be. So justifying paying that much to go to an art school when I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do at the time,
Mhm.
it was a tough pill to swallow. So I shifted more towards getting a general education, pursuing pre med, and pursuing art as a side thing, a hobby.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, after some realizations in studying medicine, I loved it. I was good at it. I loved the science. I didn't like the math, but I loved the science and I
Mhm.
loved shadowing. It was so fun to shadow and see all these surgeries up close.
Mhm.
But as you know, in your questions, I was really impressed by your questions because you did so much research on me. But after my friends passed away, I kind of had to
Mhm.
reanalyze what I wanted to do with my life and why I was doing the things that I was doing. And I decided that medicine wasn't exactly great for my mental health. It was very, very stressful. Not that fashion isn't, but I enjoy
Mhm.
this a lot more. And this is
Mhm.
what really makes me happy, as opposed
Mhm.
to just a career for a career's sake, just having a job. I want to have a passion and pursue my passion. So that's kind of what caused me to switch into fashion specifically from neuroscience.
Mhm. Yeah. In terms of going to SCAD, like, did you do like just foundation courses, or did you had a major kind of in mind, possibly?
Oh, so I got into SCAD. I didn't go. I didn't go.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, it was just it was this art school I wanted to go to in high
Just
school,
because
and
of.
the expense, and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with the degree
Mm-hmm.
there.
Mm. Oh, okay. Okay. Now, you would set your sights on going to Washington State University. So, can you tell us about WSU and why you went? And also, too, was it because of the proximity or was it because of the program that they offer, like apparel, merchandising, design, and textiles?
It was not because of that program. I can assure you that, because that is a very small fashion program, and it's not world renowned or anything of
Mm-hmm.
the sort. It's not prestigious. It was good. It afforded me, the education that got me to where I am right now.
Mm-hmm.
But with a lot of extra work on my part on the side.
Mm-hmm.
and But I went to Wazoo because um, it was close to home. It was a
Mm-hmm.
5-hour drive, the same state and everything. And at the time, after I had applied and gotten into SCAD, and I was looking at other, colleges, and I realized, wow, all of these due dates are already passed. I had procrastinated too much.
Right.
And I had some other art colleges I was going to apply to, but
Mm-hmm.
just that realization with SCAD kind of made me second guess going to pursuing an art degree in general. And so the only other college that I found that was still accepting applications was Washington State University, because they were on rolling applications, and so it like never ends.
Mm-hmm.
And so I applied. I think I got in a week later. They sent me an
Mm-hmm.
acceptance letter, and I I went and toured and accepted, and that was it. It wasn't. I wasn't super passionate about going there. It was just in the
Mm-hmm.
state, and it was convenient. And I had some neighbors that had gone there, some family friends that had gone there. They all loved it, and it's a really, really fun culture there. It's a
Mm-hmm.
really small town. Pullman, Washington, is the city it's in, and
Mm-hmm.
the population of the town without the college is 30,000, and the
Wow.
population of the town with the college is 60,000. So
Mm-hmm.
so it's a college town through and through.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you see in the movies and everything, just like small college town, a really tight knit community, and I really enjoyed my time there,
Mm-hmm.
even though it was definitely very far away from any metropolitan
Mm-hmm.
center. It was a good
Mm-hmm.
time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I want to kind of switch gears a little bit because I know it's kind of something that you've mentioned a little earlier. So in regards to, while being there, tragedy struck and, I definitely want to send my condolences to you. And it made you rethink, everything about life. And I wanted to really ask, like, how did that tragedy, change your life and how has it impacted on how you express yourself in fashion?
Yeah. So the tragedy, I'm assuming your viewers probably won't know what happened, but it my friends were murdered in a mass shooting at a party that was going on. It was the day before I had to go back to Washington State University for RA training. I was an RA at the dorms,
Mm,
and it was the day before I had to go. And there was a mass shooting at this party. And I was talking to my friends like, well, it happened, and they stopped responding, and I just thought, I went to bed. I was like, oh, nothing bad happened, but no, they stopped responding because they were shot and killed. But
mm,
yeah, so that's the tragedy for your viewers. Super lighthearted, super fun to talk about. No, but it really impacted my life, obviously.
right.
And that was three of my friends passed away from that, and it it really caused me to rethink how I express myself, what I wanted to do. It
Mhm,
made me make the switch from medicine to fashion. I saw it as an opportunity to kind of pursue my dreams in their honor, because they had that opportunity taken away from them. And
right.
so um, I pursued it for my own mental health, and
Mm-hmm.
just what made me happy. So um, how it kind of reshaped my, I guess, design philosophy, design ethos, kind of my motivation in this field is that soon after I started studying, I started applying to internships, and I got an internship with the company Cross New York,
Mm-hmm.
and I was interested in that company because they had partnered with March for Our Lives
Mm-hmm.
to make apparel for March for Our Lives, and that really impacted me because I was like, wow, this company is actively supporting, you know, gun reform and all these social causes that I was affected by,
Mm-hmm.
and so I applied to this internship, and I got the internship because they really liked um, my portfolio and everything, my work and my motivations for wanting to be there. And so since then, I've always really wanted to do something more with fashion and tell stories with design and create positive change in the world through design.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I wanted to help people, I could be a doctor. But in fashion, you can potentially have a global stage to affect change,
Right.
and thousands of people seeing what you make, and that's really powerful. And not everybody has that opportunity, and so that tragedy definitely affected my design philosophy and my motivations. Through my art and my design, I want to ask questions. I want to eventually create scholarships. I want to um, partner with social justice organizations and donate and try to impact real change so people don't have to experience the pain that I went through and my community went through
Mm.
and their friends and family. And or if they have experienced that, be able to provide, relatability and a sense of shared empathy and shared experience to connect with people through art and design and emotion. Um, yeah, if that answers your question.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yep. It definitely answers my question because definitely going through any type of loss is it's very, very sad and tragic, and especially it's very hard to bounce back from because you lost somebody or you lose multiple people. It takes a long time to really bounce back.
Definitely does. It was a very, very long journey, and it's still hard
Hmm.
sometimes, but I'm doing well,
Right.
and I'm just hoping my community and friends and family are moving on as well too, and keeping them in their hearts, and yeah, I'm just trying to make the world a better place.
Yeah, right, most definitely. But I definitely want to go ahead and ask, like, tackling haute couture, which is at the top of the totem pole in fashion. Do you think your upbringing away from meccas like, New York, Miami, LA gave you an advantage, or did it make you work harder among the other students from those fashion districts?
It definitely, I can't say it's an advantage. It's not an advantage because we're studying fashion in an incredibly small town with an underfunded fashion program isn't going to provide you with great opportunities. Like,
Right,
it just won't. That the same
right,
opportunities, that the opportunities that people at Parsons and FIT are getting in New York,
right.
like they have industry partners that are like big names that you recognize. Our industry partners I had never even heard of, and like it's not the same. But it
Hmm.
did. Like, I knew I wanted to go beyond
Right.
and like really make a name for myself and come
Hmm.
back and empower the students in that program to do the same. And so it really caused me to work as hard as I possibly could,
Right.
um,
Hmm.
all the time. I was always working, and I had my dad instilled in me a very great work ethic, and
Right.
so I didn't compare myself to the people in my program. I compared myself to the people at Parsons and the people at FIT and Institut Français de la Mode and all these top schools in the world. I was like,
Hmm.
they're working 10 times harder than everybody else in my program. So I have to work harder than them. And so at that point, I was going to class, but I usually wasn't learning much in my classes because
Mhm.
when I was outside of class, I would be studying on my own and, learning what I needed to know in the industry.
Mhm.
And then I would come to class, and class is pretty much just a review of stuff I've already learned on my own. And so I was just really trying to get ahead, as far ahead as possible. And that's how I got a fashion internship in New York City 6 months after starting studying fashion. So um, definitely caused me to work harder being in a small town. So I guess that was an advantage, but I don't think it is for everybody.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's harder to get inspiration, especially if you're from a small town, because you're not surrounded in that city like New York, LA, or Miami, where there's so much inspiration there. Like New
Yeah,
York is, New York City, like the garment district, you're pretty much immersed in that fashion mecca. You know what I mean? Like how you said with FIT and Parsons, you're not in those environments, so it can get hard to find inspiration.
exactly. Yeah, finding inspiration was very difficult there.
Right,
Pullman is like, you imagine Washington State as like this a lot of forests, mountains, greenery, and everything, but
right.
Washington State University was in pretty much a desert. It was like
Mhm.
just some hills. There was wheat fields, and for miles and miles, the nearest mall was an hour and a half away. Um, and so, yeah, there was a big lack of inspiration there.
Yeah, right, exactly. But I definitely want to switch gears and talk about something that I really found very, very cool about you is that you were an editor in chief of Lux magazine. So tell us your experience of just being the editor in chief of Lux magazine.
Yeah, so Lux was the fashion magazine at Washington State University. It was
Hmm.
small. It was a club like any other,
Right.
but we produced some really cool stuff actually. And I started out
Hmm.
at Lux just as a member of a club. I wanted to get involved with something,
Hmm.
and after that, I was appointed like the secretary or something of the club, and then after
Right.
that, the editor in chief. So I was in it for a while, and as the editor in
Hmm.
chief, it was really cool. Because I had such a great, talented team to help me produce this magazine,
Right.
and I just kind of gave some general direction of what we need to accomplish, and then for that year, and I I just tried to be kind of a leader figure for people to come to with questions or logistics problems or review their concepts for their editorials that they wanted to create. But other than that, I just kind of let people um, realize the editorials that they imagined,
Hmm.
and it wasn't super strict, and that really resulted in a really creative magazine and a really amazing product at the end, thanks to the help of my incredibly talented team. Um, uh, Editor in chief is a very glorified term for it because I definitely did
Hmm.
not do most of the work.
Hmm.
It was a huge collective effort,
Right.
um, but yeah, it was really good experience though. And I had experience in leadership from high school. I was like always involved in ASB and being class
Hmm.
president and stuff. And then in college, I became an RA my freshman year. And so I was
Hmm.
always um, I was used to managing and leading a team
Right.
and cultivating a community, because that's what you have to do. You have to cultivate a community built on shared creativity and
Hmm.
acceptance and warmth, and just a really good environment to create. And
Hmm.
we, we were struggling at the beginning with kind of funding, and it was at the beginning of COVID as well, or kind of, it was not at the beginning, but not at the middle. It was like between the beginning and the middle of COVID, at the point
Hmm.
where we couldn't have in-person classes, we couldn't have in-person clubs, so we had to meet online, and it was really tough. And
Hmm.
um, we were looking for revenue streams, and so I started to look at alternate revenue streams to bring in more money, so we could, make more editorials, make higher budget editorials, and I expanded our revenue. I increased our revenue by like 200% or something by doing senior photos. And
Right.
because we have such talented photographers in the fashion club, I was like, we need to
Mhm.
start doing photography to get paid.
Right.
And
Right.
so that was one way that we really set up the club for success
Mhm.
after I departed. And
Right.
I'm really proud of what we accomplished, and I'm absolutely amazed at what they accomplished this year as well, with the new editor in chief, and what they're doing is incredible. And I
Mhm.
just hope it keeps going up from there. And
Right.
yeah, it's cool. It was a really fun experience.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. But I definitely want to get into haute couture. So why haute couture and not sportswear or like ready to wear? Like what sticks out to you in terms of haute couture?
The artistry, it's beautiful. I mean, you can accomplish things in haute couture that you cannot when you're working in like mass produced fashion.
Right.
Um, I mean, it's hard. It's much harder to get into, obviously, and
Right.
I'm not
Right.
into. I'm not in it yet.
Right. Right.
Like I'm getting my master's in it, but I
Hmm.
don't have a job yet, so I can't say I work in haute couture, or I can't even
Right.
say I work in fashion.
Uh,
Um, but hopefully that'll change soon. But it's the artistry. I mean, it's the attention to detail. It's the craftsmanship. It's it, these stories that can be told in high fashion and couture, and that cannot be told when you're just making
hmm.
clothes for H&M and Nike and stuff. Like, it's awesome product. I love like Nike and ACG and all their like cool fashion stuff, and kind of mix
Hmm.
between sportswear and streetwear and fashion.
Right.
It's fun, but it's still very commercial. And
Right.
the designs that I've always made have been very avant-garde or very weird, kind of um, mix between Gareth Pugh and like Mugler stuff, but not as
Yeah.
good as
Yeah.
them probably. No. But I will get there. I will get there. But
Right.
yeah, it's the stories and the impact, because in couture and high fashion you have that global stage that I talked about, and you can create shows with meaning, with story, with
Hmm.
that impacts positive global change and
Right.
tackles social justice issues. And fashion has always been political, and high fashion has always been political, and a lot of
Hmm.
people don't realize that. In one of my videos about political fashion, people were like, oh, since when has fashion been political? I just want to see the pretty clothes. I'm like, you don't get, like, fashion has always been political, and it's
Right.
always cause people to question their environment, the politics, government, whatever.
Exactly.
And that's really important to me, and I want to do the same thing. So haute couture is the way to do that, or at least high fashion. Haute couture
Hmm.
is just like a few houses, and that'll be very hard to get into and become like creative director at. But high
Hmm.
fashion in general is a good way to impact positive global change.
Mhm. Yeah, right, exactly, and I seen some of your fashion illustrations. I think there was some illustrations you did for Valentino, and I
Mm-hmm.
like the design that you did because like a mixture of Garth Pugh, a little bit of Alexander McQueen, so I can see
Yeah.
that vibe a little bit, so that's really, really cool with your fashion illustrations, but yeah, but I like what you touched on, like, people it's so easy for people to look at the aesthetic of fashion and not look at the deeper meaning, you know what I mean? As artists, when we create, anything, especially, those of us who are into fashion, we understand like we want to have a meaning behind what we do, is not just to make it look aesthetically pleasing, so we want to have a deeper meaning applied to it.
Exactly. And there's nothing wrong with creating beautiful clothing. A
Right.
lot of designers do that. Saint Laurent, he never put much meaning into his collections. He focused on the aesthetic and the cool look, and experimenting with androgyny, and making you know tuxedos in silk, and that was revolutionary, and put it
Right.
on a woman. And there's not like, it's okay to just make things for the aesthetic and because it looks beautiful. But the collections that have always influenced me the most and had the biggest emotional impact on me have always been the ones with a deep meaning, and made me really think about society, I guess, and political issues, whatever is going on at the time. I think
Mhm.
those are the most powerful collections, but there's nothing wrong with creating things for the sake of beauty either.
Right. Yeah, yeah, most definitely, I can agree with that. But I definitely want to ask, What is Jansen Garside's top 5 and why?
My top 5 designers, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I wrote them down. I prepared for this.
All right.
And you in your interview with Ryan, I agreed with what you said. I've always loved Gareth Pugh
Mm-hmm.
and Mugler, and obviously, like if I don't put McQueen in the top 5, like that's unacceptable, right? Like he is a legend. You can't get better than McQueen. So McQueen is number 1, hands down. His collections were everyone is revolutionary, and not many designers can just have hit after hit like he
Right.
did. And he really like took he pushed the limits of what fashion could be, and he
Right.
questioned the society's standards of what beauty is and
Mm-hmm.
what fashion can be. And his collections at Central St. Martin's, like he would use trash essentially to make his collections. They wouldn't be, you
Right.
can't recreate some of the looks because he would just wrap people in saran wrap and things like that. And I think it's so funny when I've always disliked the part of the industry that's really like pretentious and like, oh, it has to be as beautiful, as perfect, as flawless as possible. And so I'm really attracted to designers who throw all that to the wind and say, why can't fashion be ugly? Why can't fashion be horrific and scary and uncomfortable? Because those are always those are always the collections that stick with you the most, the ones that make you feel the most extreme emotion, whether that's
Right.
extreme love or hatred or disgust. And that's what McQueen wanted. And so that's why I'm putting him at number 1. But Mugler, obviously, he was on another planet. His designs are so revolutionary, and his play in proportions and materials, and it's just out of this world. It's like I love science fiction. My thesis collection that I'm doing for my master's is very science fiction inspired, inspired by Alien, like Ridley Scott Alien, and Death Stranding, a game. And so I love science fiction in fashion, and Mugler was like one of the pioneers of that, and so really admire
Right.
his work.
Agreed.
Also, Yoji Yamamoto, I love. I mean, you've seen my videos. I'm always wearing like black mostly,
Right.
but I love his take on his idea of beauty is really interesting and was very contrarian, because Yoji Yamamoto, he saw the industry when he was getting into it, and French fashion dominating, it was all about which body part to expose, like what's the most sexy look at the time by exposing
Right.
this part of the skin. Is it the shoulders? Is it the bust? Is it the hips? Whatever. Where can we be scandalous? But Yoji Yamamoto, his philosophy was around covering the body completely, and he threw those standards away, and he said it's more attractive to be completely covered and mysterious, and it wasn't about sexualization of the body at all. He was about the mystery and about playing with proportion and sophistication and monochrome. Like he had a ton of black, obviously, and he thought black was the most elegant color, because he said it tells people, you don't talk to me, I don't talk to you, right? And so I love black, and I love his work and his what he did for the industry at the time when everything was about kind of sexualization. He went in a complete opposite direction. Okay, so there's McQueen, Mugler, Yoji Yamamoto, Carol Christian Poel. He is incredible. He questions. He throws it in your face. He's like, he makes you question what fashion is. Carol Christian Poel, I would love to have something from him because he is revolutionary. I think.
Mhm.
And like he would, he made a bag from a pig. Like it was a little baby pig, and that was a
Mhm.
handbag, and it was like a taxidermied pig. And his philosophy
Mhm.
was, he's showing you where your fashion is coming from, right? If you're okay with carrying around a leather purse,
Mm.
you should be okay with carrying around a dead baby pig, because that's where it comes from.
Mhm.
And like he would dye leather garments with ox blood, like actual ox blood. And
Mm.
he was questioning our morals. He was questioning our ability to disassociate ourselves from where our fashion comes from and the realities behind the fashion industry. And it, like, if you're wearing these leather pants, you should be okay with it being dyed with ox blood, because that,
Mm.
it died for your pants, so might as well embrace it, right? And so he really
Mm.
questioned fashion, and he was yeah, really revolutionary, I think, and really uncomfortable. And his work is really uncomfortable. He has like a tie made out of just human hair. Like it's really dark
Mm.
stuff. But I think it really puts fashion into perspective, because today I think we are losing so much of where our clothing comes from.
Mhm.
And it's easy to ignore all of the harm that's being done to the world, to animals,
Mhm.
whatever, to people. People are being affected by the dyes
Right.
that go into rivers and leading to greatly increased risks of cancer and everything. So we today are losing where our clothing comes from, and we don't care. And I like Harold Christian Poel because he puts that back into perspective, and not a lot of people know about him outside of fashion, who are like really into fashion. Um, but I like the questions he asks and the reality he presents to us, because it's really
Mm.
honest, and I love honesty.
Mhm.
So Harold Christian Poel and Gareth Pugh as my last one. He questions how fashion can be presented, I think.
Right.
And his designs, I think, are heavily inspired by Cristobal Balenciaga. And
Right.
the Cristobal Balenciaga, his designs were all about the purity of line, the simplicity, a strong silhouette, comfort. He was, one of his contemporaries was Dior, and Dior was all about creating this look for women that
Mhm.
was uncomfortable and restrictive. It was the new look. Like everybody thought it was great, but Coco Chanel said Christian Dior was a designer for women that doesn't know what women want. But
Mhm.
if you look at Balenciaga's work from the same time, his
Right.
stuff, it's similar, but there are key differences in the simplicity of his lines. He had wider sleeves for more, range of motion, more comfort, and so he had a very distinct design philosophy that was very different at the time, and people grew very attached to it. And I think Gareth Pugh takes a lot of
Mhm.
his inspiration from the design philosophy of Balenciaga and the revolutions that Balenciaga created at the time. And Gareth Pugh, he just combines that with, being emo and like super dark stuff and inspiration from movies like The Wicker Man, like horror. And he worked with Rick Owens. And so there's
Mhm.
obvious influences between Rick Owens and Gareth Pugh. And
Mhm.
the design philosophy of Gareth Pugh is dark, but really strong silhouettes, really distinct lines, and
Mhm.
memorable pieces. And the way he presents those, he
Mhm.
creates movies. He does runway shows, but he also creates short artistic films
Mhm.
that are really uncomfortable to watch. Honestly, I don't know if you've seen
Right.
any, but they're very uncomfortable to watch sometimes. Like
Mhm.
2018, what he did with like the clay and like digging into people, and it's gross. And
Mhm.
it's really impactful though. And I think fashion shows can be really boring. And so I think when designers, you know, experiment with presentation methods, which is what he did, I think it can be really
Mhm.
effective sometimes. And um, a lot of his movies, short films, aren't about the clothes specifically. It's about an artistic message. Sometimes I'm still
Mhm.
trying to decipher what those messages are in his work.
Right.
Um, but it could just be, you know, art and beauty over or form over content, right? There's not much behind
Mhm.
it, but it's form. It's the execution. It's the visual aesthetic. There's nothing wrong with that. And I relate a lot with Gareth Pugh in his designs because I've always been kind of more attracted to the darker horror stuff too. And
Mhm.
I've always imagined my shows in the future and how I would present my collections and the innovations that I could do to create a
Mhm.
very memorable presentation. And so he's a big
Mhm.
inspiration for me. Yeah. So those are my top five. We got McQueen, Mugler, Yoji Yamamoto, Gareth Pugh, and Carol Christian Poe.
All right. All right. So I definitely want to switch gears a little bit. So you're very much a fashion activist, and you've expressed concerns about fashion in regards to the cost of fashion and how it's affected in poor countries, especially to the environment. And in more modern countries where fashion has literally become a part of your lifestyle, and also too, social media is like the stop to, for people who are interested in other people, in terms of dating and other social reasons. These cheap outlets offer not much of an ability to compete with those who can afford high-end clothing. So, considering the price that we paying for cheap fashion, what are your suggestions as to how we remedy the situation?
That's a tough question because I'm a fashion student. I'm not at the top of these companies. I think these companies like Shein need to go out of business. Like
Mhm.
there is no possible future of sustainable fashion and an industry that is in harmony with the environment that has companies like Shein and H&M and
Mhm.
Zara existing. Like it is
Right.
those companies and the business models behind those companies are the antithesis to sustainability.
Right.
And like that's just the fashion industry. Obviously, there are plenty of industries that are incredibly polluting. My passion is in fashion, though, so that's what I talk about. But it's tough though because I
Mhm.
see people in my comments all the time saying, like, how am I supposed to shop more sustainably
Mhm.
while not supporting these companies? But I don't have the budget to buy directly from designers or
Right.
Patagonia or whatever. And
Right.
designers aren't sustainable. Designers,
Mhm.
they may pay better wages sometimes, and they may have the budget to become more sustainable, but a lot of them are not sustainable as it is. So I push for that
Mhm.
as well.
Right.
But companies so I create videos on brand recommendations for um, actual sustainable companies or companies that are pushing the boundaries of fashion and sustainability
Mhm.
and pushing the industry forward as a whole. Companies like Sheep Inc., who they, you know, have a completely transparent supply chain and they're carbon negative in their
Mhm.
products, and which is very cool. And I think that's just proof that more people in the industry can do that. If one company can do that, why can't more? And
Right.
I think it's just a matter of choice and profit. And
Mhm.
companies like H&M and Shein, they will never do that. They will put on greenwashing campaigns like H&M's recycling program and
Mhm.
Shein donating $50 million to more transparency in the supply chain, but $50 million is 0.3% of their 2021 revenue of like $15 billion or something. It's all
Mm.
just marketing. And if you want to shop sustainably but can't afford good sustainable companies,
Mhm.
thrifting, please thrift and thrift um, organic materials or natural materials, cotton, silk, wool, things that can biodegrade. We can't unmake the clothes that have already been made out of terrible materials like polyester. We can't unbuy all the clothes that we've already bought that are terrible for the environment and will just end up in a landfill. But we can reduce our consumption in the future and our buying habits going forward. And
Mhm.
learn how to repair your own clothes, learn how to mend your own clothes, learn how to make clothes if you want. If you're really interested in that, learn how to make it, or shop at thrift stores. And then after your natural materials, if it's all cotton or all silk or something, you can compost that. Even if you have the time for that, you can compost it, and that's helpful. That prevents one garment from going in a landfill. And
Right.
it may not seem like much, but if enough people start doing it and enough people stop supporting these terrible companies like Shein, they will change. They will have to, because it's not profitable to not anymore, right? And it's not going to be one person. It can't just be me. And it's not just me that is advocating for this. A lot of people are advocating for sustainable fashion, but I don't buy people saying that they can't afford to shop sustainably, because you can go to thrift stores. They justify buying 10 Shein shirts that are all made out of polyester, but you can go to a thrift store and get the same amount for the same amount of money, you know. And I think it's a matter of effort as well, because it's much easier to just buy a bunch of clothes off of Shein or H&M than it is to search for that natural clothing in thrift stores or online Poshmark or Grailed or wherever. There are options. They just require a little bit more effort. And so I think if people were to think more about the consequences of fast fashion and the lives that are being harmed
Right.
just to get you that shirt for $1 or $5, maybe they might be willing to put in a little bit more effort. Because I definitely don't have the budget to go buy designer and buy even the brands I recommend. I don't have the budget to buy from them. I like to promote companies that are doing that, but I can't afford to buy that. And so I thrift. Most of my wardrobe is thrifted. I found really good deals, really good garments. But it is a lot of effort. And I understand if people don't have the time, but I think you have to put things in perspective a little bit in terms of effort and our impact on the environment.
Yeah, right, exactly, most definitely. But I definitely want to go ahead and switch gears and talk about another question I asked Ryan Yip. Not only the top 5 designers, but also about there's a strong relationship between art and fashion. And the art world was the motivation behind the 48 Laws of Power by the legendary Robert Greene, which is the most iconic book he's written, laws of human nature, mastery. But specifically with the 48 Laws of Power, it deals with navigating through the treacherous world of life and business. So, in regards to in fashion, what have you learned about treachery in the fashion world?
That's a good question. I had never even heard of this book before you sent me your questions. So I looked it up. I read the Spark Notes and I read all the 48 laws that he talked about. And it was really interesting. Those laws seemed like laws of psychopaths, some of them, but like they were, some of them were pretty dark, and a lot of like traits of toxic people, I think.
Right.
In terms of how ruthless you need to be in business. And I don't identify with most of those.
Right.
I've always thought of myself as being, really warm and welcoming.
Yeah, right,
Not
exactly.
like quietly deceiving people and trying to earn their trust and then destroy them like some of those laws imply you need to do.
Right.
But treachery is prevalent in fashion. That is
Right.
true. It is a
Mhm.
tough industry to get in. And
Mhm.
like I've done 3 unpaid internships, right? And
Mhm.
that's something not a lot of people are privileged enough to be able to do.
Right.
And the more unpaid internships you can get, the better chance you'll have at a job. Hopefully, I mean that's the goal, right? That's what you're
Right. Right.
told. The more you can work for free, like you got to put in your time. You got to put in your time working for free. But
Mhm.
most people aren't in a position to do that. I'm very fortunate, and I try to recognize my privilege. And I've always had the goal of going back to Washington State University and starting like
Mhm.
a scholarship to help students that aren't in a position to do that, to give them funding to do that, that have the passion for fashion, passion for fashion. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've always wanted to, because I've seen how hard it is to get into fashion and how hard it's been for me and how much work I've had to put in, even given my very privileged upbringing.
Right.
I want to give back and make it easier in the future for students who want to get
Mm-hmm.
into fashion. But I mean, coming to Italy, it's a completely different world than
Right.
being in the US studying fashion. They take it very seriously. Not saying New York takes it seriously too, France takes it seriously, Italy takes it seriously. They all take it seriously in their own ways.
Right.
And their standards of beauty and their vision of what high fashion is, what couture is. And I mean, you see so much in the industry of people having their artwork stolen from them, their design
Right.
stolen from them, all this treachery that's going on, all this
Mm-hmm.
deception. You need to network to get jobs. You need
Right.
to. It doesn't matter your skills. It's the networking,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a really tough world. Um, when I was applying to internships after my first one, I already had one internship under my belt. But when I was
Mm-hmm.
applying to an internship for the following summer, I had a list of 110 companies I would apply to. And
Mm-hmm.
I would reach out to, cold call, email frequently,
Mm-hmm.
or apply to actual internships, 110. And I applied to 66 companies before getting a yes. And that's like I made like I customized cover letters for each of the companies. I did research on the company before I applied to them and sent in my cover letter and resume. And so it took a ton of my time to do this. To
Right.
66 applications with custom cover letters for each. And the 66th, the one that accepted me, wasn't because of my resume. It was because of who I interned for the previous summer. I had already
Mm-hmm.
applied to that person and I heard nothing back. But then I reached out to my employer from the previous summer and I said, "Hey, I know you worked with this designer. I'm not going to come back and intern for you another for another summer unless you get me an internship, unless I have another internship."
Right.
And so, because I wanted to do 2 internships at the same time, and in New York, and so he said, "Okay, give me a second." I had an internship with that designer. It was Christian Cowan. I had an internship with him 2 hours later, and I had already applied to him in
Mm-hmm.
that 60 in that list of 66 companies that I was applying to, and he didn't respond. They didn't respond.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't him specifically, but they didn't respond. But
Mm-hmm.
my one connection got it, and unfortunately, because of COVID, it was all canceled anyway. I couldn't do anything. Nothing was
Mm-hmm.
happening. Christian Cowan went back to England, and I couldn't go to New York because of COVID. But it's really frustrating how I wasn't happy when I got that internship. I was relieved, but I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
happy because all of that work, it made me feel helpless. And it made me feel
Right.
like connections were the only way to get anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a part of the treachery of the fashion industry, that people with incredible talent, people with much more talent than me, or all these designers, can easily never achieve or see a big level of success because they don't have the connections, they don't have the privilege. It's
Mm-hmm.
really sad and it's really scary, and it was scary
Mm-hmm.
for me. um, kind of looking to the future. I'm still scared. I'm so
Mm-hmm.
scared because I'm getting my master's, and I've already applied to tons of companies and
Mm-hmm.
constant rejections. And but being in Italy, it's taught me another side of treachery in the fashion industry as well, and that's the brutality of it, the
Mm-hmm.
constant criticism, the constant telling you you're not good enough. It's and it's You have to dissociate yourself from your work in a way, and you can't be emotionally attached to your work when you're getting into study and when you're studying high fashion, because your professors who are industry my professors are industry professionals. They've combined, they worked with Valentino Garavani directly as his assistant for 35 years. They worked at Dolce & Gabbana. They worked everywhere you can imagine. They have professional experience, and so they know what they're talking about, and they can be brutal. Like I was, they will tell, if they tell you your work is nice, it means it's terrible, pretty much. like, like they will tell you if it's bad, and if they tell you it's nice, it's bad, and they will rarely give you compliments. But it makes you, if you can handle it, if you can dissociate yourself from your work and not get emotionally attached to it, you can grow a lot. And that's what I've experienced as well. Like, I had a professor tell me my work was crap. Like, he's like, I like the concept, but the designs are crap. And I was like, oh, and then he just walked away. I was like, oh, okay. Like, and I mean, that's pretty tame, but having your told your art is crap is kind of tough. But they're very hard on you, and it's not for the faint of heart. Fashion is not for the faint of heart. It's and if you can accept that, and if you can accept that they're insulting you because they want you to get better. It's not a healthy relationship, but you didn't come here looking for a healthy relationship with fashion. Honestly, you don't go to get your master's in high fashion because it's easy. You get it because you're passionate about it and you want to realize the best of your abilities. And so since I've gotten here, I've gotten so much better in my design, because even though it's been really toxic, and the amount of work they expect us to produce is really unrealistic, and the time frames that they have given us is really unrealistic, and it's all about pushing us to our limits. And how far can we be stretched before we break, essentially. And it's tough, and there's a lot of treachery, and that I know is just going to persist in the fashion industry, because when we as a class have confronted our professors in the administration after school about these tight deadlines and the amount of work they want us to produce and how unrealistic it is and how we are, losing our sanity trying to do all of this, and they laugh at us. They're like, okay, but like, you realize this is nothing compared to what Gucci's going to have you do or what Valentino's going to have you do when you get a job there. This is nothing. Like, they're laughing at the amount of work that we're doing now because it's nothing compared to what they're telling us we can expect in the industry, which is really scary. But they're like, if you can't handle this, you shouldn't be here. So I want to change kind of the toxic expectations of the industry. It's even though it's caused me to grow a lot, it's not healthy, and it shouldn't be that toxic. There are ways to make it healthier. And so there is a lot of treachery in the fashion industry, but I hope with this new generation of people, the quiet quitting generation, I hope they're going to cause some real change, because it needs to be done. It needs to be done. It's not healthy. It shouldn't be like this. And so I'm hoping that the treachery will subside and it'll be a happy, healthy industry where we can also create beautiful, amazing art. Sorry, that was really long-winded, but
yeah. That's cool. But I really appreciate the response, because I do like how you said, it's important to establish a healthy environment as best you can in the fashion industry. And the fashion industry is treacherous. Life can be treacherous and unforgiving. So yeah.
100%. Yeah. Hope to change that. Hope to see some positive change in my career.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly. But also in your interview, where you was with Lux at the time, you talked about, quote, growing up, I've always been very in touch with my feminine side. It's made me question things in my own life. So can you talk more about that and how it has impacted how you view fashion?
Yeah, actually, that's a really important question, and something that I want to start addressing in my TikTok channel as well. And that's the concept of masculinity in fashion and our how we perceive masculinity and how men are very limited in how they can express themselves without certain labels being attributed to them. Because growing up, when I cared about how I looked, how I dressed, people would assume I was gay. They would ask me if I was gay. There's nothing wrong with that. I just wasn't. But I had so many people asking me that and assuming that about me. I had teachers ask my friends if I was gay. It was incredibly inappropriate for teachers to be asking that question, but that happened. And it started making me think, like, everybody's telling me I'm gay, maybe I should be gay. Maybe I am, right? If everybody's telling you you are something, you're going to start maybe questioning your own sanity, your own identity. I guess this is some kind of, what's that called? It's like a super popular word people are saying. What is that called? Gaslighting. They're like gaslighting. They're like gaslighting my whole identity, right? No, but like I knew I wasn't gay. There's nothing wrong with that. I was straight, but I was also really into fashion. But that was stigmatized. Straight men in fashion is very rare, and how like I wear makeup, and people think because of that, because I care about how I dress, because I care about how I look, because I wear makeup, I've always had people question my sexuality. And it's just something that I've learned to deal with. And people sometimes don't even believe me when I say that I'm not gay. Like on my TikTok, when I said like I have a wife, people were like, in my comments, people were like, "You're not gay, like what the heck?" And so I want to change some of that stigma of men in fashion and men wearing makeup, because expressing yourself isn't a gendered thing, isn't something that only certain genders and certain sexualities can do. Like, why do men just have to wear jeans and a t-shirt? Why can't we look nice? And so being in touch with my feminine side and kind of being romantic and being sensitive really impacted my design philosophy and what I wanted to do and how I saw myself and how I saw others. And I want to make it okay for men to be interested in fashion. And I think today men are getting a lot more interested in fashion. I see so many of my friends and so many of my peers and people on TikTok who are really into fashion, and much more men are into fashion than they used to be. And it's becoming much more acceptable, but there's still a long way to go, especially in self-expression and the stigma around like wearing makeup and things like that. And so I want to kind of push with my platform a vision of a man and masculinity that is okay with being in touch with your feminine side, being sensitive, having feelings and having emotions, and it being okay to express those emotions. And so that's just something I want to do, and something that's really impacted my life and how I perceive myself.
So, of course, we talked about how you studied at Washington State University. Now you're studying, in Rome, Italy now. Since you're a fashion mentor, is it your suggestion that most fashion students in the U.S. should consider traveling abroad, studying abroad, along with their American, education on fashion?
I think it is so highly dependent on the person. It is being able to get my master's in high fashion is a privilege not many people have. It's expensive to live in Rome for a year studying fashion where I can't work. And if you can do it, if you have the financial resources to do that, I highly suggest if you're interested in fashion, or if you're passionate about it and want to make it your career, I highly suggest it. Is it necessary? No, it is not. Going to fashion school in general is not necessary. it helps it helps greatly hone your skills. It helps develop your design identity, especially when you have mentors and professors to tell you what to improve, to
Right.
tell you that your designs are terrible and you need to really question what you're doing. It helps to have people that are invested in your future and really know what they're talking about, help
Right.
you along and be your mentor. And I recognize that not a lot of people can get that. And not a lot of people have that opportunity. And so it's not necessary. It's incredibly helpful, and it has made my, design identity and how I express myself and how I design much more refined. And I'm a significantly better designer now than I was 6 months ago, a year ago, just because of how hard I'm being pushed here. But it's not for everybody. And if you can have the discipline on your own to analyze your own work and to develop your own design identity and to research and to study fashion history and to study current designers and to stay up to date and really accept that your work is not good enough and address what you need to do to improve, then you don't need fashion school. You don't need to get a bachelor's in it. You don't need to get a master's in it, but it is helpful. But with my TikTok, I recognize that this isn't for everybody. Not everybody can do that. And so with my platform, I try to be a fashion mentor for people that don't have one, that don't have the ability to come to Italy and get their fashion education. I want to share the education with people. And I want to be that mentor for as many people as possible to the best of my abilities. I want to teach them about textiles and about high fashion and how to critically analyze high fashion. And so with my platform and with other platforms like Ryan's, like he's an incredibly informed fashion historian. I think, the decentralization of fashion education and just education and knowledge in general has been incredibly important to getting more people involved in the industry. And I think as a consequence of that decentralization of knowledge, that all the knowledge isn't being hoarded in the top schools anymore. It's important to, and we're seeing that more people are getting into it and it's becoming more accessible. It's not as accessible as it should be, but with my platform, I hope to just make it a little bit more accessible and get more people into it and provide people with the education that I was very privileged to get. I just want to give back to the people that aren't as privileged as me, because I try to recognize my privilege and doing the best I can here.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Most definitely. Now, 10 years from now, who is Jansen Garside and what does his lifestyle look like?
I am a designer for my own brand or for a brand that I love. And I am happy with my wife and I am wherever we can have a good life and where I can express myself creatively and create the designs I want to create, or be a part of something that is pushing towards sustainability and towards telling stories and creating beautiful things that are beautiful for the world and for the people, and create positive social change. And I want to be in the position to give back to the schools that have helped me, to my friends, to my peers that have helped me get where I am, because I don't believe anybody is a self-made man, a self-made person. We are products of our environment. We are products of the people that believed in us. And so in 10 years, I hope to be in a position to give back to those communities, to my communities, and empower others to do the same. And I just want to be in a spot where I can live comfortably and be happy and have a good work-life balance in the fashion industry. That's probably way too much to ask for, honestly. But happiness has been my primary goal ever since I made my big life switch to fashion. Pursuing happiness has been my goal, and I've I'm very happy now, and I hope to be happy in 10 years and expressing myself. And yeah.
Last but not least, where could people find you on social media, and how could people support you and your work and your TikTok content?
Yeah, TikTok, I am Jansen Garside. And Instagram, I am Jansen Garside. That's the only social media I have right now. I'm thinking about creating a YouTube channel to put some shorts on there, just to expand that. I've been told I should make a newsletter, so I might do that. But for the meantime, TikTok and Instagram, Jansen Garside.
All right, cool. Well, thank you so much, Jance, for jumping onto the show. Like, this is a really cool conversation. The content that you do on TikTok about fashion is really, really cool. Same with Ryan Yip. You guys are touching on different facets of fashion history. So I really, appreciate that. And I'm learning more from you guys. So, I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. My primary goal is education through my platforms. I just want to empower others and educate them. So I'm really happy you had me on. Thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to click the bell for notifications. Also, follow me on my social media platforms and visit my website, ASIATHABIRD.com, and be on the lookout for more interviews to come very soon. Take care and stay beautiful.